would somebody rather look rich than actually be rich? And how can we change this mindset to avoid these pitfalls? So welcome to Mind Over Money. We're going to talk about this issue today. Have you ever felt pressure to spend money? Have you ever felt the old keeping up with the Joneses? Hey, my neighbor just bought a new car. I better buy a new car. These friends of mine have designer clothes. I'm not going to fit in if I don't wear them. Look, I invite you to stay around. We're going to rethink your money mindset. I'm going to give you 5 points to help get your mind right so you can get your money right. The first point is society pushes us to look rich. And look, trying to give off the impression of being rich versus actually being rich, your money and your wallet are at stake with this issue. Most of us have been conditioned to desire convenience, status, luxury, and we buy ourselves these things to satisfy these desires. We get really, really good at justifying why we should spend the money on some particular item to help us fulfill those desires. 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So you can't really afford to be out there spending your money on luxury and status. The internet pushes us to try to look rich on X, on Instagram, everywhere you go. It's flash, it's lack of substance, but designer clothes, the $1,200 designer jacket, $800 sneakers. Yet 62% of Americans plan on cutting their spending for next Christmas. So what are they doing spending money on this? I remember a commercial from a long time ago that I feel epitomizes this exactly. I'm going to play it for you right now. I apologize for the graininess of it, but this is the best example I could find. Here you go.
I'm Stanley Johnson. I've got a great family. I've got a 4-bedroom house in a great community. Like my car? It's new. I even belong to the local golf club. How do I do it? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I can barely pay my finance charges. Somebody help me.
So, how many of you are Stanley out there trying to give the impression of status, driving new cars, living in a big house, belonging to the country club, when in reality all you're doing is crying for help? The second point I have is that flashy spending costs you. Buying status, watches, cars, and vacations to look rich just actually destroys any chance that you ever have at actually being rich. Look, there are a few people that you'll meet in life that can afford to do all of it. And, maybe you have the desire to do that, but unless you have the means to do it, you probably shouldn't spend all of your money. 36% of people making between $80,000 and $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're spending every penny that you have coming in, your future is going to be pretty bleak. You may be surrounded by a bunch of stuff, but you're just going to have to work until you're 90. So how does flashy spending cost you? Look, you can spend $1,000 on a watch, and what do you have for it? Look, you probably put it on a credit card because you didn't have $1,000 in cash to actually pay for it. But if you had taken $1,000 and invested it at 7%, which is kind of the average historical return, in 10 years, that $1,000 would almost double to $1,967. In 20 years, it would be almost $4,000, $3,800. And in 30 years, that $1,000 would be over $7,600. That's what it costs you to spend on flash instead of invest on substance. 78% of Americans feel stress about money all the time. So if you're driving a fancy car, wearing designer clothes, going on an expensive vacation, but every time the bills come due every month, you're worried sick that you can't make the bills, is it really worth it to spend your money like that? My third point is quiet wealth builds freedom. So what does that mean? Again, we've sort of defined flashy spending. But if you just take a small portion, $50, $200, hopefully more than that every month, and you make easy investments, over a 30-year time span, you will have more money than anybody that you know. So the median salary in our country is just over $61,000, right? So half people earn more than that, half people earn less than that. And you can actually become wealthy even on that sort of median salary. All it takes is $200 a month. If you can avoid buying coffees, designer clothes, getting expensive haircuts, driving a fancy car, and just invest $200 a month and earn 7% for 30 years. Look, we're talking $2,400 a year that you're going to save. Over a 30-year time span at 7%, that is $227,000. $200 a month. It is not an impossible task. If you look at your spending, guarantee you can scrape up $200 a month right now to invest. It feels slow, right? Our brains aren't really wired to look at how compounding interest works, but trust me, it works. So on $61,000 a year, in 30 years, you can have $227,000 in the bank or more. And keep in mind, it really beats the median savings in our country, which is $3,000. So think about that, right? $3,000 is what a good majority of people have in their account. But half the people have less than that. That means within that half, a whole bunch of people have nothing. So $227,000 on $200 a month, you can do it. You can get there. But that's how quiet wealth builds freedom. It's the steady, unseen growth that trumps your loud spending. Point number 4, the mindset traps fuel this cycle. What does rich look like? So this is part of what gets us, right? We have this idea, because it's been ingrained in us and through society, that rich looks loud and flashy. It's expensive clothes. It's fancy cars. It's eating at expensive restaurants. But does driving a fancy car signal to others that you're smart, that you're rich, that you're important? And even if it does, even if you believe that it does, the reality of it is that it doesn't. The irony is that what people see when they see somebody in the fancy car, the big house, they don't think, man, that person has it made, I wish I was them. What they think is, if I had that car, if I had that house, what would people think of me? Boy, they would think that I'm rich, that I'm smart, that I've got it made. And let's keep in mind that the people who are driving the fancy cars, that live in the big houses, are rarely wealthy. They're probably broke. The point is that even if you are wealthy, showing it off does not work out the way that our minds believe that it does, right? We think that other people are going to think we're great. All they think is, if I had that, everybody would think I'm great. 60% of people are uneasy about savings. But they make the choice to go spend $500 on an expensive handbag or $300 on a pair of jeans for some reason, because it's this conditioning in us. You get this endorphin rush from spending money. You get this one-time good feeling because I bought this thing that makes me feel good. But again, when the bills come due at the end of the month, you are not going to feel good. Look, we see people driving $90,000, $100,000 cars, and we're like, whoa, they've got it made. The reality of it is, they've probably got a $900 a month car payment. Their insurance is sky high. They have no savings left because whatever little bit they did have, they had to put down on the down payment. Just because somebody's driving something expensive doesn't mean that their net worth is anything. When I used to take my kids down to DC, we would always have this little discussion. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who live on the streets in DC, and they would be asking for $10 or handout, spare change, whatever it happens to be. Obviously, they're poor, right? Obviously, there's something wrong that's gone wrong that derailed them from a societal perspective, and they're living on the streets. But let's say they have $10 in their pocket. On the drive home, we would see expensive cars. We would see expensive houses. And I would say to my kids, hey, who do you think has a bigger net worth? The person in this expensive house that has the really expensive car parked out front, or the homeless person that we saw downtown? Inevitably, they would say, well, the person with the big house does. But the reality of it is that most of those people are just like Stanley. They're in debt up to their eyeballs. They have a negative net worth because they owe so much money. They could earn $200,000 or $300,000 a year, but if they're spending $10,000 a year more than they make, if they have credit card bills, giant mortgage, giant car payments, they actually have a negative net worth. And the homeless person on the streets of DC with $20 in their pocket is richer than they are. It doesn't mean that they earn more money. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about net worth, right? So spending all your money doesn't give you a big net worth. Saving it sure does. Like one of the people I like to read their book is Earl Nightingale. He says we become what we think about. So focus on wealth, right? Focus on where you want to be in 10, 20, 30 years. And then you have to take action to get there. Jim Rohn, who's another person I really like to listen to and read books from, said discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. So just stop and think about that. The $20 that you spend today on coffee and snacks is a $1,000 burden tomorrow because you've racked up debt, put it on credit cards, and it eats away at you. When all you have to do is make these small choices to save for a big difference in the future. Point number 3, it is these small steps that break this cycle. We need to be searching for financial intelligence. What has your upbringing, your emotions, your assumptions about money done to your decision making? Right? You have to be able to step back and be objective about why you do the things that you do with your money. Does money buy happiness? Look, not if you're overspending, not if you're worried about your finances all the time and how you're going to make the bills at the end of the month. Where do these ideas come from? Again, everybody that's out there, every ad, most people that you talk to, they're all trying to figure out how to separate you from your money. And part of that is to make you think that you have to spend your money to obtain some status, to obtain the look, to make people think that you are something that you're not. And we've talked about all this in this video already. Change your mindset, right? That is not how real wealth works. Wealth is what you don't see. So there's a great book called The Millionaire Next Door, right? And it goes into the whole thing about wealth is subtle, not flashy. It's value and function, not status. Keep in mind, nobody is as impressed with your possessions as you are, right? The typical millionaire is driving a Toyota that's used. They're working at a dry cleaners or some other small business. There's nothing flashy about them. They're very conscious about what they do with their money. They have a plan. They don't care what other people think. And they work their way towards savings, right? So what action can you take today? You have to make a subtle mind shift change, right? Number one, it would be great if you can stop thinking about what other people think about you. Keep in mind, they're really not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. That's just how life works. Nobody cares if you're driving a fancy car. Nobody cares if you're wearing expensive clothes. Only you do. Nobody else really does. Make a small change, right? Skip one thing. Skip one thing a month. Take $50. Right? If you can just take $50, we already talked about $200, but if you can take $50 a month and save it, right? At 7% in 10 years, that $50 a month is going to be $2,500. In 20 years, it's over $10,000. In 30 years, it's over $21,000. This is a small change. Make one different move, and it actually leads to real wealth. Just skip one meal a week. $30. Well, good luck getting a $30 meal anymore, but let's just say $30 a week. You're going to save $120 a month. That's $6,000 in 5 years if you can get 5%, which you can go get 5% easily today. It's small changes, right? Keep in mind, 65% of the people are chasing looks. 25% of high earners are broke. It's all about the quiet wealth, changing your mindset. Stop being one of the 75% of Americans who are constantly worried about money. A small change, a little bit of savings, going to ease your mindset amazingly, right? It's not about status. It's about quiet wealth. Just make a little change. Skip a coffee. Skip a small purchase every month. It's going to make a big difference in your mindset, because remember, you got to get your mind right to get your money right. If any of this hit home with you, if it resonates with you, subscribe, hit the like button. I'm going to keep putting out little videos like this. We're going to talk about how you can change your mindset, and it'll make a huge difference in your life. Thanks a lot.